This is Charlie Kratovil with New Brunswick Today. We're here with Mayor Jim Cahill in New Brunswick. And I just want to say first, it's an honor to be interviewing you today. Thank you for taking the time. All of us at New Brunswick Today appreciate it, especially our readers.
Good to be with you, Charlie.
Thank you, sir. So let's get started. I know yesterday you were hanging out with the State Senate President. And I just wanted to ask your views on Senator Sweeney and some of the other folks who are trying to be the next governor. Do you have an opinion on who would be the best choice for the Democrat Party?
Well, it's certainly very early in the process, and I think that, and I'll speak only about Democrats for the time being, that I think all of the names that have been put forth, if you will, as likely candidates all have some really strong attributes that would make for good leadership at the state level, and it is something we certainly need.
Cool. Do you think Governor Christie has any chance of becoming the next president?
I think as time goes on, it becomes apparently less likely. But you know, politics is a funny business, and the sentiment of people can change quickly, and oftentimes it doesn't take much to make them change their minds or to focus on something different. So while that's not so early in the process, and things are getting a little bit more heated, if you will, from a campaign perspective, time will tell. But I think the tea leaves right now don't bode well for Governor Christie, but that could change.
Okay. Let's move to local issues. Is it true that you have abolished the internal affairs review process that you started, I guess, a few years ago?
I'm not exactly sure what that means, that question, but let me answer it as because there was a number of, I'm assuming you're talking about the procedures that we established in 2011?
Yes.
Okay. There were multiple processes that were established at that time. One was a hearing process.
Yes.
One was a different mechanism by which the police department was going to be undertaking their internal affairs reviews and investigations. A third piece was a public reporting of the incidents that were being complained of, and then the fourth was the establishment of a community liaison officer position. Some of those parts are still in existence and some of them are not. So we'll take them in the order that I mentioned them, if I can remember them in that order. Okay. Number one, the hearing process. The hearing process was intended to specifically deal with incidents that occurred between, and you know, I'm trying to do this off the top of my head, between January 1, 2003 and a date in October, I want to say somewhere around the 12th of October of 2011. Those dates were picked because they were tied to the time period that Sergeant Richard Rowe, who had been assigned to internal affairs, was in internal affairs and had responsibility for doing investigations through the date on which I announced these new plans. So it was to allow people the opportunity to have a forum, to bring forth their complaint, to establish a hearing, to establish a record, and to get their case re-reviewed upon sufficient information provided. There are two individuals who took advantage of that process. Now the time period is 3.5 years past that deadline, and so in the apps there are no cases pending and no complaints filed, so as a natural incidence, that hearing process is terminated. anybody who was going to have a complaint would have filed it by now for that time period. That hearing process was not intended to cover anybody who had a complaint of the police department post October 12 of 2011. So by a de facto process, that hearing process is now over. The internal affairs procedures that were instituted at the police department, we put in new officers to do the hearing process. We had greater numbers of officers. We had redundancies and oversight that were created so that it wasn't just left in one person's hand to take a file from beginning to end. We asked for and received greater oversight from the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office, and we instituted better tracking and monitoring systems of those complaints and time frames in which they needed to be completed. All of those elements continue in place, with the exception of referring all internal affairs complaints to the prosecutor's office directly. After a 6-month period or so, the prosecutor referred jurisdiction back to NBPD on incidents because of the trained personnel, the certification process that the PD was going through, the monitoring programs and the tracking programs that have been instituted, and the reporting that was being done. However, like all jurisdictions in Middlesex County, any complaint of excessive use of force and/or violation of the criminal codes on the part of a police officer goes still directly to the prosecutor's office, which handles that process. On the third element of the public reporting, the police department still does a monthly report. Not only do they still do the monthly report, but in response to some requests from some citizens, and we thought it was great input, they've expanded the areas and the topics upon which they report. So that continues to remain in place and becomes even more detailed and enhanced than it had been when we first initiated it. The community liaison officer's position still remains in place, and is that person, who's Charlie Gaydon, is still there to help bridge the discussions between police and citizens, and to help residents, citizens understand the process, and to explain to them what their rights and obligations are, so that they are more familiar with the process and can get any questions they have answered.
Okay, so she's still in that role.
Yes.
The hearing process, though, has been terminated.
That is correct.
Okay, can you tell me when it was terminated?
Well, I don't know that it's been officially terminated in a sense of that somebody declares this is hereby terminated. But as I indicated before, on a de facto basis, if there's a certain time period for which it was to cover, and in the absence of any complaints pending, and a 3.5-year period since the last date, what hearing would take place?
So you made the call to terminate it, though, right?
Now, that's the same question that you asked in a different way, and my answer would be the same.
Okay, I spoke with Ms. Gaydon, and she said that it was the mayor's call and you terminated it. I'm just asking when that happened.
Well, I think I indicated before, as a matter of fact, I'm certainly indicated, that it has never been officially terminated.
Okay.
As if someone said, I hereby terminate this, but as a de facto matter, that in the absence of any pending hearings, a 3.5-year period that has now elapsed since the date that a complaint, that 3.5-year period from the time period in which a complaint could have been filed involving an incident, as a natural occurrence, the process is terminated.
So if someone came forward today with a complaint from 2010, they would be denied.
It's kind of stale at this point in time. I mean, generally look, this is not a specific legal process or procedure that was established to govern particular rights and all of these other things. It was to afford citizens an opportunity to be heard. At some point, like there's statute of limitations that exist for certain things, and there's reasons for that. As time goes on, things become more difficult to follow up on. Facts become a little bit more murky. How do you go back at some point in time, that distance in time? I just think as a practical matter that if you haven't come forward today, by today, you know, the time has run.
Right.
So, I mean, if it's helpful to the cause, if it eliminates uncertainty that anyone may have on this, I have no problem indicating it's been terminated.
Okay.
But that has not happened in an official capacity as of this point in time. But it is not a big deal. I'm the one who created the process. I'm the one who can terminate the process.
Right, I understand, but I don't believe there's a statute of limitations on internal affairs complaints, is there?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, I'd imagine there'd probably be a good reason for it if there's no statute of limitations. And
A good reason to maintain it?
yeah, I mean,
Well, the
what's
only
harm?
process was to cover the time period from January 1, 2003 to October 12 of 2013, to give people yet another forum in which to have a discussion on something they felt that they were aggrieved on, and that the matter wasn't processed properly, or that they chose that they didn't want to come forward because they felt it wouldn't be dealt with properly. And that was tied directly to a particular individual, which gave cause.
Right.
Potential cause for people to think their case wasn't processed properly. Is it for all purposes, all reasons, et cetera, forever and a day? No, there's a process that exists today. We from all appearances, the process has worked well since that deadline. There's new personnel in. Everybody's seems to be relatively pleased with the processes that are there. So I don't see a need to continue the process.
okay, do you feel that the hearing process was a success? Do you think faith has been restored in internal affairs?
It certainly hasn't been by the two people who took part in it.
I mean, do you think so do you think it's not a success?
I don't think it depends how you quantify success. Was the process a good idea? Was it an opportunity for people to take advantage of? I think the answer is absolutely, positively yes. And the fact that there were only two people that came forward is interesting in and of itself. But if you measure success by were the two people who filed requests for hearings, and were they happy in the process, the answer would be no, they were not. So depends how you gauge success. It was intended to do something. Whether it accomplished that, I don't know, but it certainly was there as an opportunity for residents and or others to take advantage of.
Okay. How do you feel about a more, more broad accountability measures, like having a civilian review board for police matters? Would that be something we could have in New Brunswick? Would you support that?
I've never been convinced that that's necessarily a better process. There is ample studies on whether they help or don't help the process. They're inconclusive. So I would suggest that first people need to look at the Attorney General guidelines to see if it's even permissible, and if so, then we could see what kind of process might be in order. But I think right now, at least in the city of New Brunswick, the process works. It is obviously a subject matter that has, I won't say just recently, but it has gone to the top of the pile throughout the country in the United States, and deservedly so. But for right now, I think the process that we have today works well.
Okay. Can you tell me about the water director you hired? And correct me if anything I say is wrong, but he used a racial slur on the job. It was brought to your attention. Someone brought it to your attention, and you demoted him. Can you tell me why didn't you fire him?
I'm not going to comment on what he said. because it's a personnel matter. But as you indicated, he did say something he shouldn't have said. And he said it in front of other personnel. And in light of what he said, I decided that the best thing to do was to demote him to his current position and to reduce his pay accordingly. It's a personnel matter, and as personnel matters, they are. It would be inappropriate for me to comment any further on it, but that was what I thought was in the best interest of the city.
Okay. But you could have fired him as a department head, right?
As a department head, there's broad abilities on the part of a mayor to discipline a department head, and removal is an option. Whether or not it would have been successful had it gone through a process would remain to be seen.
Gotcha. I want to talk about the Mine Street plans, the plans that were voted down last month. A big issue was parking with that. A lot of the people that came forward against that plan said that it would make the parking situation even worse on Mine Street. Can you tell me, what is the city doing about the widespread problems with parking in downtown, outside downtown? Some of the neighborhoods, it's really hard to find a spot.
Well, parking is always an interesting thing in New Brunswick. When you have a streetscape that's been in existence in large part for 300 years, and you have narrow streets, you have houses that are, and oftentimes, because let's use the Mine Street area in the 5th and 6th Ward, we have housing that is on a 25 by 100 lot. At one time, were built in all likelihood at times when people didn't have cars, and now they're housed with people or groups of people that have as many as 5 or 6 cars, all trying to put a car in front of a house that's only 25 feet wide without a driveway. Parking is going to be a problem. So from obviously in the downtown area, parking garages and things like that have helped dramatically, and we now probably have a good number of parking spaces to service the downtown area. In the neighborhoods, it becomes more difficult because parking garages are not what most people want to see in their neighborhood. And while there are some municipalities that have taken that approach, we think that that's not yet the way to go. We've spent a great deal of time and effort on trying to make the city less dependent upon cars, more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. We've been progressive on that and making great strides on it. We've got a long way to go, but it is a process. And I think that given the particularly younger generations and their willingness to live in a more urban environment, to study or work or live close to where they have outside interests, etc., their leisure time activities. I think we have good hope for the future on that. We need to continue to improve our mass transit system. Our shuttle system that we've started works well, but could be better. We've formed good partnerships with the university and the county to try and get that done. We continue to explore different opportunities with the university to move people better and more efficiently than perhaps we do now. So it's a multi-pronged approach, but the best thing that can happen is people get out of your car. You know, we all know people need to have cars, or may need to have a car, but if you can walk somewhere, walk somewhere. If you can bicycle somewhere, bicycle somewhere. And it's our job from the city's perspective to try and enhance that as best we can. If for no other reason, it's a healthier lifestyle.
As a result of some of the things that were going on with the Mine Street project, I filed an ethics complaint against the planning board attorney, Ben Buca, and the ethics board had a hearing. There were numerous problems with the procedures they used. They were violating their own procedures. what's going to be done about the ethics board to make sure that they, like internal affairs, improve their performance?
I don't necessarily subscribe to your theory that they violated their own procedures, etc. While I followed, the end results of what the board found for Mr. Buca to have done or not have done, I really haven't analyzed the process. That is their responsibility and their job, and I trust that they did it. Other than that, I'm not aware of any concerns that were expressed with regard to the procedures that they followed.
Okay. So after the vote at the Mine Street, on the Mine Street application, four members of the planning board voted against it, and in the weeks after that, 2 of those board members resigned. Mr. Mayor, don't you know how that looks?
How does it look?
I mean, it looks like they crossed the powers that be, and now they're no longer in the positions of power they had.
I guess if one thinks there's a boogeyman in every closet, then maybe that's their perspective. I think the more practical perspective, and the one that would be more factual, is that there are a couple of dedicated people who are volunteered to serve on that board for a very long period of time, who have indicated a willing and a desire to resign from the board or not to seek reappointment with the upcoming new year. But that because they were dedicated people, and because they knew that should they resign in the midst of the Mine Street application, that further delay might occur, that there would be new people introduced to the application process, and that they agreed to stay on board to the conclusion of the Mine Street decision. And for that, we're very grateful that they were dedicated and concerned citizens that, understand the importance of community, understand the importance of their role in that case, which was one of the most controversial matters that we've had before the planning board in a long time, and that they were dedicated and committed enough to their community to see it to its end. And we're grateful for that. And so they hung in. And now we'll replace them with other people who will hopefully be equally dedicated.
Yeah. Have you found replacements?
We're in the process of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me why you replaced Kevin Jones on the planning board?
Kevin serves on the Housing Authority. It comes a certain point in time where maybe we pile too much on somebody. So we felt that in light of his already serving on one board and his other duties that he has out of my office, which often involves evening activities, that we'll give somebody else a shot on the planning board.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about diversity. So typically in a municipality, the highest paid people are police officers and the department heads. You have 9 department heads currently, or 8, I think. One person does double duty. Yeah. They're all men.
Yes, they are.
And the New Brunswick Police Department has 133 sworn officers. 5 of them are women. The Parking Authority Board is very powerful. They make a lot of key decisions about redevelopment. They've racked up a lot of sizable amount of debt that the taxpayers are on the hook for. And the board consists of 5 white men.
Yes.
Do you have any plans to change that, to get more women and people of color in these positions of power?
We always do. Let's talk about the city administration. The advancement of people through the process. Let's talk about police and fire because they're a little bit different than the rest. Advancement within police and fire is all done by testing. Right. While there is some discretion that's afforded to the appointing authority, in this case me, the discretion is very limited. So as one moves up the ranks, they or get hired, in those instances. They first have to pass a test, they have to score well enough on a test, and then they have to be within a certain number in which we can select them. I can't think of an instance in recent years meaning 5-10 years, that we have bypassed anybody in the selection process. So we've hired and or promoted in rank order in both police and fire. As far as the head of police and fire, it normally goes to somebody who has some rank.
Right.
And out of police and fire, I have one Caucasian and one African American who serve as the directors of their respective divisions. So that's the process with those. In the rest of it, it really is a question of who has the experience and who has been able to move up the ranks within their respective divisions and who has the qualifications. And over the period of years, and I'm fortunate that I've had a pretty good group of people that I've been with for quite some time. So those people have stuck around. Those people at the time that I appointed them were the best qualified and most familiar with the city. And I want to say without exception, they're all New Brunswick residents. Would I like more diversity? The answer is yes. And diversity not only in ethnicity and race, but also gender. And it's a goal that we strive for. But right now, I think I've got the best people I could possibly have, or else they wouldn't be there. But it is a goal that we would hope to achieve as people, through the attrition process, should it occur, that we'll do our best to make sure that we try to achieve a mix that reflects the diversity of the city, but at the same time making sure we always hire the most capable person who's available to serve.
Gotcha. Criminal justice and police community issues have been at the forefront all across the country. Speaking of, representing the city and having diversity that represents the city, you recently appointed a new municipal court judge, your former law partner, and now all 3 municipal judges in New Brunswick are white.
Yes, they are.
Do you think that undermines people's faith in the criminal justice system when the city is so much more diverse than that? That when it's the people that are in such a position of power are all white?
Well, if people judge a judge by the fact that what color they are, or what ethnicity they are, then I don't know how I deal with that. What I would look for in a judge is somebody who's judicious, somebody who's fair, somebody who analyzes a case and makes a decision appropriately. I suppose if there were 3 judges, and by the way, you didn't mention that one of the judges is a woman,
she is,
which was a concern of yours 5 minutes ago, but that's less of a concern now. But what do? Do we make sure that anybody who's a defendant that is a woman goes before the woman judge, because that's where they'll get the best judging? Do we send the white folks to the white judges? Do we send African Americans to African American judges? Do we send Latinos to Latino judges? No, I don't think that's the way the system is intended to work. I had Ronnie Wright as the chief judge for a very long period of time. I was the first person to appoint an African American, particularly as a presiding judge here. So my track record on who my judges have been is fine as far as diversity. But there was an opening here, and I know Jim Hobish very well, having been his law partner for a very long period of time. And he is as honest and trustworthy and fair and impartial a person as I know. And quite frankly, after looking for someone for a considerable period of time, that person was right under my nose. And so, as I always do, I pick the person who I think best serves the city of New Brunswick. And Jim Hobish was the guy. And I'm pleased with that decision, and candidly, the municipal court's operating very well under his watch.
Okay. Now, you're the mayor job is a part-time job for you, and it's not your choice. That's by the way the city has been run for forever. Do you think the city would be better served if your position was a full-time job?
It depends what you mean by full-time. I mean, if you're talking about the hours that I work for the city of New Brunswick, it exceeds what most people would describe as part-time. If you say part-time based upon its compensation, then depending upon what your definition of full-time, part-time salary would be, at $40,000, which is what it's been since 1991, I suppose a good argument could be made that that's part-time. If you say full-time is that the only time that I devote to working hours or work or income is mayor, then I would be part-time, because I do devote some time to the practice of law. So depending upon what your definition is, I'm part-time, but I could be, if you're just counting on hours, I'm about as full-time as you can get.
Okay. So I looked at your financial disclosure statement. You do have some other income. You have a law firm that you are a partner in. And can you tell me, like, what kind of work do you do with that law firm, and how much of your time do you spend doing that?
I do only two things, and I normally wouldn't talk about, my practice, but because it usually involves clients and things like that who have personal interests and things that. But my practice now is limited to representing the Milltown Ford Avenue Redevelopment Agency, which is, as it sounds like, a redevelopment agency on a particular project in Milltown. I've done that for 3 years or so. Mm-hmm. And the only other thing that I do is I occasionally represent people in guardianship applications who are alleged to be incapacitated. And that's a subject matter that's kind of near and dear to me, and I serve as the attorney to protect the interest of the person alleged to be incapacitated.
Okay.
And that's the only things I do.
Understood. I also noticed Bishop Investors is a source of income for you. What does Bishop Investors do?
Well, as you know, Bishop Investors was a company that a limited liability company that I was involved in some 10 to 12 years ago. That was a partnership, if you will, among my brother, my cousin, and I. And I dissolved myself from that partnership 10 or 12 years ago. And though I sold my interest back to my brother and cousin, and that income that is derived from that is the payments that they've been making over a 10-year period.
Okay, so you're no longer an owner
No.
of Bishop Investors, but you get paid every year?
Right, there was whatever the interest was, so that it wouldn't be too onerous for the company that they pay.
They pay you yearly?
They pay me actually on a monthly basis, but
okay.
Yeah, soon coming to an end.
Gotcha. And the Milltown Ford Avenue Redevelopment Agency is pursuing a redevelopment project that involves a developer that also does work in New Brunswick. Do you see that as a conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest?
No. If I did, I wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I see it, actually, the roles fairly identical to what they are in Milltown and in New Brunswick. In New Brunswick, there's a developer and a property owner who I am the mayor. I am the governing body, so to speak, of course, with others. And the same role exists in Milltown. There's a developer and property owner in town, and I represent the governing body. Right. So the roles are identical, so to speak. One is advisory, and the one is more is the CEO, the executive. But nevertheless, I'm advising an executive branch of the government as to what they can and cannot do. I see them kind of on parallel courses.
Okay, but don't you serve different interests? Whereas one, you're serving the citizens of New Brunswick, and the other one, you're serving the citizens of Milltown. I mean, don't those interests sometimes conflict?
In what way?
I would just imagine that sometimes Milltown residents might want something different than New Brunswick residents want, and you're kind of caught in the middle, along with this developer.
I don't. The projects are independent of each other. It would be kind of like representing two clients who are different clients in the private sector, and one client wants to buy a house and another client wants to sell the house. You can represent both people. They have different interests. They have different things that they want to get done. In Milltown, if the redevelopment agency says that we don't want this to happen, my marching orders are simple. That's I'm supposed to do whatever I can to make sure that doesn't happen. If in New Brunswick we would like to see something happen, then our mission is to carry out to make sure it gets done. They're mutually exclusive. I don't see, unless you have further explanation, I don't see in any way, shape, or form a potential conflict there.
Okay. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about is your predecessor was John Lynch. He was mayor for, I guess, a little over 10 years.
12 years. 12
years, yeah. And so between the two of you, you've held the mayor's office since the late 70s.
Yeah, that would be accurate.
Yeah, how do you feel about, term limits or, fresh blood, new people being empowered? Do you think that, a lot of people react and they think it's a long time for one family to be in power.
One family? You have two different individuals. I guess the Jerry Calabrese, who just unfortunately passed away, who's been mayor for 50 years, would not argue in favor of term limits. But look, term limits are what term limits are, but there's two ways to look at it. You can automatically force change by legislation. There's certainly something to be said for that. And then you deal with whatever happens, but there's an automatic transition. Not unlike the state of New Jersey, where we change all the time, and where's that gotten us? Then you take a look at the premise that ought not the voters have the opportunity to say who they want and whether or not somebody should stay in office. And for those folks that feel empowerment of the voter is what should drive who leads, then that's the process that should work for them. So, whether or not, obviously I'm not in favor of term limits, or else I would have self-imposed them.
Sure.
But as a practical matter, I think, the process that I go through when I make decisions as to whether I'm going to run again before I get to that, the change for the sake of change is not always a good thing. And if it is that people are looking for change, the only thing you need to do is look at the city of New Brunswick and see who has been the greatest catalyst for change in the city. This city has changed, and you can only draw the conclusion it has changed for the positive over the last 20-some years, and to use your time frame, over the last 30-some years, through the last two administrations. It has been nothing but positive. New Brunswick is a place today that people are proud to call home. New Brunswick is a place today that people are moving to instead of running away from. So if the purpose of a term limit is change, then I would suggest that would have may have changed who was leading, but it may not have led to the change in the city of New Brunswick that people had hoped would be accomplished. So my analysis is, particularly with that framework in mind, is do I still have the energy? Am I still, do I still, in my own viewpoint, and bear in mind it's subjective from my perspective, do I still have the vision that this city can continue to move forward under my leadership? Am I still good at what I do? And then, even with all of those things, if the answer is positive, but do I think it's time for a change anyway, notwithstanding that? Because there is a time when change is important for the sake of change. And thus far, in the 6 times I've had to make that decision, I've answered the first 3 in the positive and the last one in the negative. And so that's it. You know, term limits are nice to talk about in the abstract, but I don't usually do that, and I usually don't draw conclusions. If you have a rotten mayor or a rotten executive, the best thing in the world that could happen is a term limit, and the term limit should probably not exceed 1 day. But if you have somebody that's good, and somebody who stays energetic and vibrant and visionary, and keeps the government entity that they're leading in a positive direction, and advances all the progressive causes that a community like New Brunswick has, why would you want to limit that person? Why would you want to increase the chance that maybe there's not someone who's quite as good? That's not for me to say. Whether or not that latter one, whether I meet that criteria in the latter example, but why not have the voters make that decision?
Gotcha. And so Mayor Lynch was, of course, prosecuted and convicted and even did a term in jail.
When did that happen?
I wanted to ask, you know, what did, you know, your administration do to sort of clean house after Mayor Lynch was convicted? You know, he was jailed, but it was alleged he was part of a network
That's
of corruption.
That's a question that I see 2 dots, but I don't see those dots in any way, shape, or form connected. When John Lynch was convicted, he had been out of office in New Brunswick for a considerable period of time. So whatever difficulties he may have had, they did not involve the city of New Brunswick. So there would be no reason to clean house because of his difficulties. So I don't understand the question. I don't know. There would be no impetus to say, well, let me look at everybody here that works for the city of New Brunswick, because there was 0 connection.
Well, I mean, some people who still work for your administration were hired by Mayor Lynch.
Oh, so you're rolling the tape back. So
Well,
it wasn't a question. So are you suggesting that, you know, 10 years into my mayoralty, that because somebody got convicted on something 10 years after he was no longer mayor on things that did not involve the city of New Brunswick, that I should go back and discipline somebody? Or I don't even understand that logic. And quite frankly, I'd have to think about who they were, because there are certainly no department heads that I have. No, there may be one. Steve Zarecki may be in charge of Public Works, may be the only one who was a department head when I came office that I retained.
And a few of the attorneys that work for New Brunswick.
Well, T.K. Shammy, yeah.
Bill Hamilton.
Yeah.
Ben Buca.
I'm not sure about Ben, but you might be right. I'm not sure about Ben. But Bill Hamilton, yeah, but Bill Hamilton and I had a relationship. You know, I used to work for Bill.
Oh, okay.
When I first practiced law, I became an assistant city attorney in 1980, and in the private sector, I started working for Bill Hamilton as his associate, and I did that for about 5 years. I much prefer Bill working for me than me working for Bill.
Okay, and
so. But I understand now. I understand the question.
Yeah.
But I still don't see a correlation between the two. And I've given those people. So taking a Steve Zarecki, a Bill Hamilton, a T.K. Shammy. They are honorable people that I am so pleased to be a part of my administration.
Well, but just the point I want to make is surely you know that people can...
Is this where I say, don't call me Shirley?
Surely you know that you know people who are not officially in office can still wield a lot of power and influence, and you know...
Happens all the time.
Yeah, so Mayor Lynch, for instance, might have had influence long after he left both of his positions of power. I mean, do you still consult with him? Do you...
Is this your boogeyman in the closet again? I do talk to John. Do I consult with him? No, I have a relationship with John. He had been a friend for a long time, and so I do see him on occasion, and we get a chance to talk about friends and family.
Cool. All right, well, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was a real honor and a pleasure.
Hey, Charlie, always good seeing you.